Hey everyone, I am Dapper of Dapper Inspirations. Welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be continuing our dive into the question of how Gravity Falls relates to Christianity. But with that being said, let's get into it. So, first and foremost, guys, if you have not watched episode 1 of this series, please go do so. We covered the first way of how I think Gravity Falls relates to Christianity in that episode, and I also would just really appreciate it if you went and checked that video out. But with that being said, let's start diving into the second way of how Gravity Falls relates to Christianity. Now, I think the second way that Gravity Falls relates to Christianity is through the topic of skepticism. Now, you may be thinking, well, how are you going to relate Christianity to skepticism, much less relate Gravity Falls to Christianity through skepticism? And I totally understand where that mindset comes from. And honestly, I had that mindset while coming up with this script, but I think that Gravity Falls does relate to Christianity through skepticism. And here are some examples of skepticism in both the Bible, real life, and Gravity Falls. So let's start with Gravity Falls. Now, I think in the show, skepticism is a huge part of it. And with the main character, Dipper, being a huge skeptic and not really trusting anything that his Grunkle Stan told him, right? Like, he always doubted and he never fully trusted or believed his Grunkle Stan. And we see that in the episode, I don't remember the exact name, but it was the episode where Dipper's great uncle Ford came back from the portal, and we saw that Dipper just lost complete trust of Grunkle Stan and was skeptical of who he really was. Now, do we see skepticism in the Bible? Of course we do. And we see skepticism through one of Jesus' 12 disciples. And that disciple's name was Thomas, or known by Christians and non-Christians alike, Doubting Thomas, who was skeptical of Jesus at first. He is a great example of skepticism in the Bible. Doubting Thomas did not fully believe Jesus. He needed proof, he needed evidence before he truly believed. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later in this episode. And in real life, we see skeptics all the time. People coming at us saying, hey, your religion's wrong and our science is right. Or your religion is wrong and our religion is right. And things like that. And I don't want this episode to be talking about the debate whether Christianity is right or Christianity is wrong. I personally believe that Christianity is right, but that's not the purpose of this episode. The purpose of this episode is to relate Christianity to Gravity Falls through skepticism. But I did want to take a little bit of time explaining apologetics, which is basically defending our faith. Proof that Christianity is right. Now, again, I don't want this to turn into a debate in the comment section. I just want to cover some very basic and bare-bone reasons why we as Christians, or evidence why we as Christians believe what we believe. So, what is the evidence of Christianity? Well, there is a lot of historical proof of Christianity, i.e. the dynasty of David. People have found remnants and proof that the dynasty of David actually existed, and I'm referring to the dynasty of King David, of course. But there's proof that that existed. And not only that, there are testimonies from random people saying, yes, Jesus died on the cross and rose again. Now, in our US court system, for a story to become factual, you have to have eyewitness testimonies. A story is proven factual after multiple people, usually around 3, all have the same testimony, and they're all telling the same story. Now, there are some exceptions to this, and there are plenty of examples of that not being the case. But most of the time, when at least 3 people are saying the exact same thing, it's true. Our US court system determines it to be true, and to them, that story becomes factual. Now, for our US court system, if it only takes 3 testimonies to make a story factual, then the Bible and Jesus rising from the dead is absolutely factual. Because not 3 people, not 4 people, not 5 people, not 10, not 100 people testified and had the testimony of that Jesus died and rose from the dead. Thousands did. Thousands of people saw Jesus die on a cross. And 4,000 people saw him rise again. Saw him walking on the street after he was crucified. Thousands. But not only that, though. Our lives can serve as a testimony. We as Christians take testimonies and our story with Christ very seriously, and that's a big thing that especially like youth ministry focuses on, helping us as Christians build our testimony, our story. So not only do we have the testimony of thousands of people who said Jesus rose from the dead, we also have our own testimonies. Our own reasons for believing, our own experiences can serve as the evidence or the proof of Christianity. And our testimonies, we each have a testimony. So it's way, way more than 4,000 testimonies, comparing it to all of the people who testified that Jesus rose again. It's way more than that. Probably in the millions of testimonies that there are of Christians, their stories. But I wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about skeptics. People who deny Christ. People who do not believe and do not want to believe that Jesus came down on earth, that he died for our sins, and that through his sacrifice we are saved. Now, there are plenty of people who believe differently than us. There are so many different religions out there, and they all have contradicting ideas. Judaism, Buddhism, the religion of Islam, all have contradicting ideas. Same thing with atheism. People who believe that God never existed, and that the universe was created by things like the Big Bang Theory, or the Big Bang. Now, these are all general things. Like, I wouldn't say that all atheists believe that the Big Bang Theory is correct, or the theory of Darwin evolution is correct. I wouldn't say that's all, but I do have to go off of general stereotypes here, because I really don't have anything else to work with. But obviously, people are going to believe in different things, different religions, and all that jazz. So what are we as Christians to do about that? Well, I think the best thing for us to do as Christians is to just present our belief. Not to force anything down their throats, but just to simply present the path to Jesus and nothing more. I honestly think Christians who are forceful with the gospel take Jesus' good name and drag it through the mud. Because when we are forceful with the gospel, we are not acting like Christ. When we are forceful with the gospel, we are hurting God's kingdom and not necessarily growing it. Now, I do admit there are examples of how being forceful works. Sometimes that works for people, and I do 100% understand that. But most people don't like that. Most people don't like it when we as Christians force something down their throats. Why? Why don't they like it when we force something down their throats? Well, ask yourself that same question, and you'll get your answer. If someone was trying to change your religion, make you not believe in Christianity, and forcing that down your throat, forcing the science and historical proof, disproving the Bible, how would you feel? Not very good. I know I wouldn't, at least. And that's because no one likes a person who is forceful with what they believe. And honestly, Jesus was not forceful with what he believed. And I think a great example of this comes in John chapter 20, verse 27. And that verse reads, "Then he said to Thomas, 'Put your finger here, and see my hands, and put out your hand, and place it in my sides. Do not disbelieve, but believe.' Then verse 28 reads, Thomas answered him, 'My Lord and my God.' And in verse 29, it says, Jesus said to him, 'Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed.'" Now, to give some context for that single verse, basically, all of the 12 disciples, excluding Judas because he was kind of dead, but excluding Judas and Thomas, all of the 12 disciples had seen that Jesus had rose again. And Thomas didn't believe them. The 12 disciples said, "Hey, Jesus rose again. He did what he said he would do." And Thomas said, "I will not believe until I put my finger in the holes in his hands." So Jesus came, and he said, "Go ahead, put your fingers in the holes in my hand." Now, was he forceful with that? Yeah, maybe a little bit. But he was still gentle. He was still gentle and reminded him, "Blessed are those who believe without seeing." The thing is, here's the truth. Is that what other people believe should not affect what we believe. Our faith is our own. Don't let anyone tell you any differently. If you choose to believe in Christianity, great. You are a brother and a sister of mine through Christ. But if you don't, that's okay. Because that's your choice, and I can't do anything to change that. Yes, I can present the path to you. I can plant seeds. But at the end of the day, I don't get to make that choice for you. You do. Now, depending on your choice, I believe that you will either go to heaven or hell. But that choice is still yours. If you don't want to believe in Christianity, good for you. Because I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to force the gospel down your throat. Yes, I'm going to try to present it to you and explain to you what I believe, but I'm not going to force it down your throat. Because, again, I feel like the people who do that take Jesus' name and drag it through the mud. And here's a truth. In reality, Christianity is not about us. It's about Him. It's about Jesus. Christianity has never been about us. It's been about Jesus. It's been about Jesus' sacrifice, not our sacrifices. The Bible is Jesus' story, not ours. We learn from Jesus' story. And yes, we can learn from other people's stories. But what I found in my own personal life is when I turn to the Bible, it gives me better answers than most people can. But what about when skeptics get to us? When what they say gets to us and we start to doubt what we believe? What are we supposed to do then? And is it okay to have doubts? Is it okay to question God? Now here's the thing, guys. God isn't afraid of your hard questions. Never has been and never will be. If you have hard questions for God, ask them. But make sure you listen to the answer. Even if that answer is hard to swallow, make sure you listen. And a lot of times people ask, well, how do I know when God's talking to me? How do I know that it's God's giving me this answer and not my own human flesh? And here's the best way to do that. That if the Bible backs up what you're hearing, then that's God. That is the absolute best way to determine it. To ask yourself, does the Bible line up with what I just heard? And the thing is, guys, we got to accept that sometimes we're going to have doubts. I think it's a completely healthy and normal thing for us to have questions. We're children of God. And children have questions. And when people ask those tough questions to us, and we don't know how to answer them, here's the thing. Don't answer questions you don't know. Don't answer questions that you don't know the answer to. Instead of doing that, look up the answer. Figure it out. Build your own faith. Say things like, well, I don't know that answer, and that's a tough question for me, but I'll find out. Because that's one of the best ways we grow as Christians. Is to ask a hard question and then find the answer to it. But to wrap up, the purpose of this episode is to tell y'all that people like Dipper are going to come into our lives. They're going to be skeptical. They're not going to necessarily believe what we believe. And that's okay. We got to accept that sometimes we got to dust off our feet and move on to a different town, just like Jesus did. We also got to realize that we shouldn't be being forceful with the gospel. Because Jesus wasn't forceful with the gospel. And again, I do realize that sometimes you got to be a little bit forceful. But be mindful of your audience. And that right there is a lesson I've had to learn for my entire life. And a lesson I still have to learn sometimes. And the thing is that your doubts and your questions are okay. God will answer them if you listen. We got to accept that other people are going to believe differently than us. And really, all we can do is build up our own faith. Build our relationship with God. Because if we stress out about what other people think and what other people believe, that's going to be one horrible life. I want to remind y'all of one last thing. That Christianity is not about us. It's about Him. And that is just going to about wrap it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching the second episode of how Gravity Falls relates to Christianity. But with that being said, until episode 3, the final episode comes out the day after next. Make sure to stay tuned for that. But until that video, I shall catch you next time. Peace.